F-Zero, a racing game series developed by Nintendo. With its first release in 1990, it gained a decent following all the way up until its last release in 2004. Since then, it hasn't seen the light of day in almost 15 years, other than a few mentions in Mario Kart and Smash Bros. We don't know if the franchise will ever get another release, but should it? Let's take a look at where they left the franchise in the US anyway. To do that, we'll be taking a look at F-Zero GX, the last game released in the US on the GameCube in 2003. But first, let's take a look at how the series got there. The original F-Zero released on the SNES in 1990 as a launch title in Japan alongside Super Mario World. The game takes place in the year 2560, where a new form of entertainment has been created called F-Zero. That's a good enough setup for me for a futuristic racing game, to be honest. The game was innovative for its time, both in the gameplay and graphics department, making use of a new graphical technique called Mode 7. It was a pretty straightforward game. It had 15 tracks, 4 racers, and no multiplayer mode, but it was fast and difficult, and it was well received. Jumping ahead to 1990 comes F-Zero X for the N64. A sequel to the SNES game, this one transitioned to full proper 3D graphics and adds some features, while maintaining a similar experience to the SNES game. It was praised at the time for its amount of content, track design, fast gameplay, and good performance. However, it was criticized for its poor graphical quality compared to Nintendo's standards at the time. The game uses a lot of graphical tricks and effects to keep the frame rate high, giving the game a bit of a rough look. One interesting thing to note is the F-Zero X expansion kit, released only in Japan on the failed N64DD add-on. In this kit were 12 new courses, a track editor, and a car creator. I personally think it's a huge shame that the track editor never made it into a more widespread release. I think it would have been so cool to see what people could make for a game that requires such fast reflexes and high speed. 2001 saw F-Zero Maximum Velocity released on the Game Boy Advance. Back to the 2D graphical style of the SNES game, this game was developed as a sequel. There isn't a whole lot to say about this one. There were some minor mechanical changes to boosting, and it had a few weird modes, but that's about it. Also, it takes place 25 years in the future, so you can't play as Captain Falcon, so that's lame. Anyway, let's get on to the big boy. F-Zero GX was released in 2003 on the GameCube. It followed in the footsteps of F-Zero X and maintains the high-speed, high-difficulty gameplay F-Zero has become known for. It has a story mode and 26 tracks for you to tear through. In addition, the game actually got an arcade release in the form of F-Zero AX. It was released on the Triforce arcade board, named that not only because it involved Nintendo, but also because it was the first business alliance between Sega, Namco, and Nintendo. And my god, I've played this, and if you've ever wondered why Captain Falcon has a six-pack, play this thing. You will understand quickly. F-Zero GX was well received for its intense gameplay, track design, and challenge. Some consider it one of the best GameCube racing games, and also one of the best GameCube games in general. This is where the series sadly stopped in North America, so let's take a deep dive into F-Zero GX and see where they left it. There's a few modes in F-Zero GX, but let's start with Grand Prix. In Grand Prix, you play 5 races in an effort to gain points and be at the top of the leaderboard at the end. There are 5 cups total, but you start with 3. After you've beaten Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald Cup, you unlock Diamond Cup. There's also AX Cup, but we'll get to that later. A race in F-Zero GX consists of 3 laps. On the first lap, your energy bar is red, and can only be refilled by driving over fuel strips on the track. Bump and smash your way through the crowd on the first lap, because when you hit lap 2, and oh boy, let's get cooking. When you get to lap 2, your energy meter changes color to rainbow, and you can now boost. Energy is both your boost fuel and your health, so it gives an element of risk-reward. Do I boost as much as I can until I'm pretty much out of energy and then hope I don't crash and die? Or do I conserve only for safe boosts and aim for the safe fuel strips? It makes your first race on a track really fun. It's sort of an emergent learning experience. You spend the first lap learning the track and figuring out where you can boost and how to handle certain parts, so that on that second lap, you can smash that boost button. Speaking of dying, death in this game, especially in Grand Prix mode, can be brutal. In this game, if you fly off the track or run out of fuel, you are dead, or retired, and you have to restart the race. In Grand Prix mode, you have lives, and on higher difficulties, you have less of them. On Master mode, you have just 2. This is not a lot, especially if you have a habit of dying on a specific track. If you run out of lives, you have to restart the whole Grand Prix. It can really suck. But have no fear, there is a way to gain extra lives in Grand Prix mode. By destroying the competition and bathing in the blood of your enemies! If you press X in a direction at the same time, you do a little slide to the left or right. If you hit someone, and they're not Z-spinning, they explode, and they're out of the race. You will literally see the total number of racers go down. They dead. This is another element of risk-reward. A few times I really tried to drop back in the pack to farm up a life if I was afraid of a dangerous course, only to inevitably lose the race or die in the process. Moving back into Grand Prix, this destruction mechanic is actually extremely important at high difficulties if you're anything less than a god tier racer. The thing is, when you destroy an enemy in Grand Prix mode, they come back the next race, but they do not get any points for the race they were destroyed in. If you can manage the pack well enough, you can literally get to the point where by the 5th race, they cannot pass you in score, even if you get 30th. And while we'll touch on it in places later, let's discuss Master Mode. If you beat the 4 main cups on Expert Mode, you unlock Master Mode. Master Mode is the hardest difficulty and it does not mess around. You need a car with good boosting, some good driving and destruction skills, and some patience for trial and error. Now normally, I personally would avoid the hardest difficulty in the game, since I'm not usually one to play on the hardest difficulty. But unfortunately, they locked 6 tracks behind Master Mode. As I previously mentioned, there is a 5th cup featuring 5 more tracks, AX Cup. This cup has tracks from the arcade version of the game I talked about earlier. The only way to get these tracks and this cup is to beat the 4 main cups on Master Mode. For me, this was not an easy feat. Specifically, Sapphire Cup and Emerald Cup were super tough for me to win. The Master Mode cups are actually what took most of the time playing this game to make this video. So if the meat of the game is Grand Prix mode, then let's talk tracks. Some are better than others, so we're gonna go through every track. Mute City Twist Road. Twist Road is about what you expect from a first track. It's short, has massive fuel recovery strips so you can very easily stay at full energy every lap, and minimal drifting is required. It's simple and fast. I'd probably say it was boring, but it's the first track, so I'll let it slide. Casino Palace Split Oval. Split Oval is interesting because unlike most of the tracks, this track almost seems to disincentivize boosting. There are boost panels all over the track encouraging weaving to get them, keeping you at top speed most of the race anyway. It's even a bit dangerous to be boosting. As you get toward the end, after the fuel strip, there's a hook in the track that you will fly off and die if you are going too fast. In the custom car I was using for most of my playthrough, I even had to slow down to avoid dying on it. It's a pretty straightforward course, but considering how much speed you get on it, I'd prefer if the track just let you go fast and have the challenge be keeping up with the boost pads, rather than going fast only to slow down right at the end. Sand Ocean Surface Slide. Surface Slide has a problem. While the track itself is pretty standard and has a few tight corners requiring drifting, there's an issue I have. In this game, I want to go fast. Going fast requires boosting. That requires boost pads, or adequate fuel strips to have enough energy to boost. This stage has one fuel strip about 1/4 of the way through the lap, but that's the only one. And after that fuel strip, there's no boost pads for the rest of the lap. So inevitably, you boost 2 or 3 more times and you're out of energy, driving normally and slowly for the rest of the lap until you get back to the fuel strip. They should have added either more boost pads after the fuel strip, or added another fuel strip somewhere along the course. Lightning Loop Cross. Loop Cross almost suffers the same fate as Surface Slide. The boosts and fuel strips can be a bit sparse. You're definitely running out of energy by the end of the lap, but you're soon back on the main loop of the course where the energy strips are, getting ready to be boosting again. I actually really like the big loop. It has a break in the fence in the middle, encouraging crossing over to the other side, which can be risky, but rewarding in Grand Prix when you really need a boost or a fuel strip. Aeropolis Multiplex. This track has a little of everything, and really gets you into the F-Zero mindset for the rest of the tracks. 90-degree turns, jump panels, regular jumps, and dirt and ice surfaces that change how your car handles. It's a really great course, and encourages going as fast as possible while dealing with all of the obstacles. You can really tell when you figured out the track too. On my last run of the track, I was going so fast that when I hit the jump panel, I actually hit the bridge above. I knew I was going fast enough then. Big Blue Drift Highway. This is the first of what I would describe as a short but hard track. It's not a track you can easily do well on your first time, or even your 5th time. This one can be tough in GP mode, because obviously the CPUs know exactly what's coming, but you don't without some practice. In addition, it's short, so it's easy to lose your lead and not be able to get it back. The worst part of it all is the very sharp lateral turn at the end of the track. It's the perfect place to bump into the wall right at the end of the race and lose. I don't much like the track. The lateral turn is a bit silly and the rest of the track is nothing special. Port Town Aerodive. There isn't too much to say about this track. It's a lot of straightaways and room for boosting. I can't say there are very many interesting features of this track as a whole, other than maybe the big jump at the middle of the track. It is a good track for practicing destroying opponents or farming a life if you're on GP mode, but this track was seriously easy on every difficulty I played, even Master. I'm not sure I ever lost on this track. Green Plant Mobius Ring. Now this is a track that I love. It's super simple. It's a Mobius strip oval circuit that has you racing on both sides of it, or one side of it. But unlike tracks like Split Oval, this one has awesome boost placement and fuel strip placement, allowing for mad speeds. Because there's a fuel strip at both the start and the middle of the course, and because there are boost pads placed appropriately around the track, you either are hitting a boost pad or boosting to the next pad the entire race. This one just lets you go really fast on a simple track. I love it. Port Town Long Pipe. This is where the tracks start to get really interesting. This track immediately puts you into a pipe that you can drive on all sides of, and it's so fun. You have no fear of falling off the track, so you can go as fast as you want. In addition, it's surprisingly possible to learn the boost placements, which shows that the track wasn't just designed to be a loopy tube mess. There's a weird bumpy pipe part toward the end that I think was designed to disorient you on purpose, which I get, but I don't really care for. Other than that, love this track. Super fun, hectic action. Mute City Serial Gaps. I hate this course. This course is slapped right at the end of the Sapphire Cup and is the source of most of my trouble with it. Full of tight, gross turns to smash into the walls on, gaps to fall off of when you get bumped into said walls and don't have enough speed, mines to send you careening off in the wrong direction, possibly falling off in the process, and so much more crap jam-packed into a super short track. There's barely even any room to boost or move, especially when you're playing with 29 other computers on the track. It just feels like you're fighting the course and holding on for dear life. The track plays you, and it feels like there's barely any room for you to play the track. Firefield Cylinder Knot. This track has you racing on the outside of a pipe through a lava-filled chamber. It's interesting visually, but honestly there's not a whole lot of insane things going on. You get what you see. You race on the outside of a pipe. It can be stressful at times. If you boost in a weird spot, you might end up flying pretty high off the track, though I never actually fell off from flying too high, but it always made me think I was going to fall off. So if the goal was to have a stress-inducing racing experience, it worked. Green Plant Intersection. This one is interesting. It sort of combines Long Pipe and Mobius Ring into one fun course with some weird design choices. The beginning of the track has you racing a short flat section and leads into a pipe. The pipe then weaves up and down, going through the track that you'll race on after you exit the pipe. A cool concept, but man, there is no strategy to get through those curves fast. Just slam your booster and hang on. After that, there's another weird decision. Two pretty long fuel strips that are like really close together. If you fuel up on the first one after coming out of the pipe curves, you literally cannot empty your boost tank fast enough before you get to the next strip. It just feels like they could have spread them out a bit more. The last thing on this track that bothers me is at the very end, there's this little bump turn that is 100% designed to send you flying off the course and into a tree. It just feels awkward and forced. Truth be told, I quite like racing on this map, it just has some questionable design choices. Casino Palace Double Branches. Let me start off by saying the Casino Palace theme is my favorite in the game. It's such a cool and stylish aesthetic to theme a race on. Anyway, this track does a ton of interesting things design-wise. From some split paths that cross over each other, to a feature at the very beginning of the race where the tracks split and then end up really close to each other vertically, so there are cars driving upside down right above you. It's a super cool effect and totally blew me away the first time I saw it. This course is pretty fun, some tough handling sections coupled with long raceways for combat and speed. My only complaint is that there are a few outward banking turns where you can fly off the course if you're going too fast. It never feels good to brake in an F-Zero game. Lightning Halfpipe. This track is kinda awkward. It's stress-inducing. The majority of the track is a big half-pipe, so it gives you the wonky controls of racing in a pipe with the added fear of flying off the side and dying. When you get up near the sides of the half-pipe, especially on turns, the controls just start to feel really weird. In addition, there's this weird hairpin turn thing toward the end of the course that pretty much forces you to slow down if you don't want to go flying off. The whole thing just feels weird. It's not my thing, but I can see how some people would like it. Big Blue Ordeal. Ordeal is a track that requires some mastery, but can be super fun when you get it down. The first half of the track can be a bit scary, with some jumps immediately after tight turns that you can die on if you're not careful, but once you get into the meat of the track, there are some awesome tight turns and boost opportunities to really sink into, and you can get absolutely cooking. This is a straightforward F-Zero course, and I have a great time racing on it. Cosmo Terminal Trident. Trident is a pretty interesting track design-wise. Most of the track is split into sections where you pick one of 3 paths to travel down before having to make the next choice. There's a lot of opportunity for boosting due to the liberal placement of boost pads and fuel strips. It's quite fun doing runs of this track and optimizing your path and speed. My one complaint about the track is that the first lap is quite slow. With no boosters, you're forced to sit through long, empty sections of track. At least in GP mode, you can use the time to farm up some kills, but on time trial, it's just you and the road and a minute of trying not to mess up before you get to the second lap. Sand Ocean Lateral Shift. This track has a lot of straightaways complemented by, you guessed it, lateral shifts in the track. These shifts themselves are easily traversed, but on GP mode, this track can be quite a challenge dueling it out with the CPUs on the straightaways. It's pretty easy to get smashed off the track at one of the turns if you're not careful. This track also has a pretty decent boost placement overall, so it's a track where going really fast is definitely a thing you can do. Overall, solid track. Firefield Undulation. This track is kind of just full of awkward stuff. Awkward humps in the track that make boosting difficult and unsafe, awkward bumpy track sections that are kind of just uncomfortable to drive on, awkwardly placed jump pads that don't really serve a purpose, and one of which just tends to throw you into obstacles, and an oddly placed jump that kind of just has you falling down for a second or two. It's all kind of jammed into one big circle, and it's just an odd course overall. Aeropolis Dragon Slope. The game really starts to push your mechanical knowledge here. This track is pretty unique. After the initial drift-heavy double back turns, you hit a part of the track where you go off ledges of varying heights as you make your way down to the lower section of the track, only to race your way back to the top and do it again. It's a neat enough gimmick, and helps to show you a bit more about how the air control works and how you can use it to your advantage to get as far out as you can in the air. The rest of the track is designed for heavy drifting, boosting, and speed gain, coupled with a really fun full-track ice section. Phantom Road Slim Line Slits. Ugh. This course leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It's okay if you're racing it solo on time trial, but if you're racing it on GP, it's just uncomfortable and not fun. It's pretty much a skinnier and more turn-heavy version of lateral shift, but the track is so slim that it's hard to even maneuver properly without smashing yourself into the walls every 5 feet. I had a ton of trouble maintaining any sort of speed on this course, and honestly, if it hadn't been the last track of Diamond Cup, I'm not sure I would have been able to beat Diamond Cup on Master Mode. The Phantom Road track theme does have good music though. Okay, at this point we've seen every default track, but drag yourself through Master Mode on all the cups we just mentioned, and you're greeted with the AX tracks. Remember that the difficulty of these tracks isn't necessarily more, since this is its own self-contained cup, exclusively for the arcade version. First up is Aeropolis Screwdrive. This track is super simple and straightforward. No tricks, just a big wide track and a fuel strip at the beginning and middle of the track to give you ample fuel for boosting and going fast. If straightforward, wide, fast tracks are your thing, this is the one for you. Outer Space Meteor Stream. This track is also pretty simple, but fun. The first section of this track takes place in a more elongated flat tube, as opposed to the completely circular tubes seen in the rest of the game. Inside this tube are ice sections, where the entire tube consists of the ice surface. This leads to some fun moments and wonky handling when you hit them, making things a bit hectic. Along the inside of the tube and during the last section of the track after you exit, there are many boost pads and fuel strips so that you can boost to your heart's content. It's another track that really lets you go as fast as you can handle. Port Town Cylinder Wave. Our final track raced exclusively on the outside of a pipe. Some parts of this track take on a similar shape to the inside of the pipe we saw in Meteor Stream. This is easily my favorite outer pipe track and is probably the most interesting one as well, featuring pipe size changes, a branching pipe path, many boosters on different sides of the pipe, encouraging switching sides many times, and even a finish line that you fly through in the air. It's a really neat course. Lightning Thunder Road. This track is a lot to unpack. I want to start out by saying that this track is probably my second favorite track in the whole game. At this point, the tracks are pushing your cornering and fuel management skills to the max. There are more than enough boost pads and fuel strips to keep max speed the entire race. You're handling 90-degree corners, weird jumps into fast cornering, bumpy sections, skinny sections, tight turns that require sliding while drifting, and more. It's a super intense fast track and I love racing on it. I definitely get in a zone and it's over before I realize it, which is saying something because this is a decently long course. Super fun. Green Plant Spiral. And this is my favorite track in the game. They put everything they got together into one long, glorious final track. It starts out with racing in a tube, doubling back to racing on top of a pipe that goes back through the tube. If that isn't enough to sell you, I don't know what is. Super fast cornering, turns perfect for shifting through, an ice section that gives me and a ton more. Honestly, my only complaint is that it suffers from slow first lap syndrome, but I honestly don't care. Once you get that booster, you take off and have a blast flying through this course, since by the time you get to this track, you know how to play the game and can have a ton of fun. A perfect final track. But wait, there's one more we missed. After you go through all the cups, unlock the AX tracks, and then beat AX Cup on Expert or higher, you get Mute City Sonic Oval. What you see is what you get. It's just a big oval. It has a few boost pads and fuel strips. That's it. You can beat it in under 1 minute. I'm guessing this was meant to be some sort of Easter egg, having this be the final track, but I found it pretty funny. So that's every track in the game, 26 in total. I think most of them are well designed for the game, and they have quite a bit of replay value due to learning the track allowing you to go faster and do better. The time trial mode specifically has a bit of content in the form of staff ghosts after you beat the base records. At first, I thought there were some tracks that were inconsistent in difficulty. When I was making my first pass through the cups in expert mode to unlock master, there were some tracks I was having a ton of difficulty dealing with, and others where I couldn't lose even if I tried. However, what I realized post-master mode is that I was actually just worse at some of the tracks than others and hadn't improved yet. By the time I unlocked AX Cup and went to play it on expert mode to unlock the tracks, I got first place on every race on my first try with a 5+ second lead on most of the races. I had been improving without realizing it, which made going back to that easier difficulty very satisfying. I could tell instantly that I had gotten better. So moving on, there's a few other modes the game offers you to get more F-Zero if all that Grand Prix action wasn't enough for you. There's a versus mode, a time attack mode that I briefly mentioned earlier, and a practice mode to really sink your teeth into the specifics of the courses. But there's one more main mode we haven't touched yet, story mode. The story mode of F-Zero GX follows Captain Falcon doing some cool stuff. Jam-packed with funny voice acting and cheesy CGI cutscenes, it's pretty short, being only 9 missions in total. However, some of them can be quite challenging, so let's dive in. The story starts out following our villain, Black Shadow, in a race. You see him dueling head-to-head with another racer, battling it out before he gets smashed and stumbles out of his car. A robot-looking guy grabs him and tells him he has one more chance to win the F-Zero Grand Prix. So there's our setup. The start of the first mission cuts to a scene of Captain Falcon walking down the street to his lair, where he has a training setup for practicing for the F-Zero Grand Prix. The mission itself is a simple training mission. You have 80 seconds to go around the track as many times as you want and pick up all the capsules. It's honestly really easy. I missed one on my second lap and still had enough time to get back around to it on the third lap and finish. It's an easy start. Captain Falcon finishes the mission with ease and steps out of the car, seeing Black Shadow on the TV, foreshadowing the showdown to come. In the second mission, we're in a canyon now, I guess? We see Samurai Goro and his goons ambush Captain Falcon as he's making his way through the canyon in his racer. Goro says something about Captain Falcon stealing prize money, and he tells him he's got a race, and if he loses, he forfeits his racer. The mission is a 1v1 duel against Goro on a canyon track that has falling rocks everywhere. They take some work to dodge, but it's not too bad. The real challenge is that Goro has a way better booster than you do. The track has no fuel strips, so you'll need to conserve what little boost you have. If you don't have enough at the end, he'll fire off 2 quick boosts and beat you no problem. It's not that bad of a mission in the end, but compared to the ease of the first mission, this one ramps the difficulty up really fast. It took me quite a few tries to beat this one. Falcon wins and Goro smashed his machine into a rock or something, I guess. Falcon cruises into the city and heads straight to the local bar. Inside, there are tons of really weird-looking characters that are other racers, I guess. The CGI makes them look pretty creepy. There's a couple guys fighting, there's a lizard man getting drunk, there's a big robot mech guy, you know, the usual suspects. Falcon runs into an old man who wants him to enter a race for him to win some money. He literally drags him off the bar stool and puts him into a silly costume, and we're off. The mission is a standard race on a track consisting of entirely 90-degree turns. It's honestly not really a fun track to race on at all. Dealing with the jump pads can get pretty annoying, and the enemies are definitely set on expert or master mode. Honestly, it was story mode that made me realize that the Blue Falcon really isn't that good of a car, and it can make some of the later missions pretty tough. After a few tries I got it, but it was a bit frustrating. Falcon gets a cut of the money before catching a glimpse of a news story that Black Shadow is running wild in lightning, and heads off to go catch him. On the way, he runs into Michael Chain, the leader of the Bloody Chain Gang. They're trying to stop him from getting to lightning, and the gang closes in on him as the scene ends. If you didn't know how to destroy cars efficiently before, this mission will teach you how. You have to get up to Michael Chain and destroy his car and then finish the race. The trick is, there's a bunch of Bloody Chain members trying to beat you up along the way. So, get smashing. The more you can destroy on the way to the front of the pack, the easier the end is. The game rubber bands Michael to the front of the pack for 90% of the race anyway, so you can't really even get a crack at him until the very end, which is honestly my biggest complaint about it. You have to race the whole track just to get one shot at Michael, and if you mess up, you gotta do the whole thing over again. It's not really a hard mission in the end, but it can take you a few tries to get the hang of it. Captain Falcon loses Bloody Chain and heads into lightning. When he shows up, there's destruction everywhere, and some random scientist dude we've never seen before tells us to go save Jodie, a girl we've also never seen before. But you know, it's fine. Lightning is gonna blow up, so you have 50 seconds to race through a tube and hit a jump at the end to escape. This mission is pretty easy, and I had fun learning the gates, and it only took me a few tries to get it down. I definitely missed the jump at the end once, though. Lightning explodes, and Captain Falcon comes flying out just in time. He drops off Jodie and notices Black Shadow in the distance doing this, I guess, and he heads over to confront him. Captain Falcon tells Black Shadow they should settle this at the Grand Prix, but Black Shadow has other plans, and is trying to kill anyone that can compete with him. He puts some weird electric stuff on Captain Falcon and a doppelganger of him pops out of him. Blood Falcon. Blood Falcon slaps a bomb on his car and Black Shadow levitates him in. They start the Blue Falcon down the track and Captain Falcon breaks out of whatever the electric stuff was to get ready to race. In this mission, there's a bomb strapped to your car that's speed sensitive, so if you go below a certain speed, you die. So of course, they put you on a track designed to make you lose speed. In theory, it makes perfect sense, but it actually ended up being quite annoying. It's a pretty long track, over 2 minutes worth of racing, and the last fourth of the track can get really tough. One bad wall bump and it's over. No chance to fix it. You've got to be pretty perfect. It would be quite tough to get this in one try, so it just feels like forced trial and error to me. I like the concept, and I'm not sure what they could do to execute it better, but the experience of it was annoying. Captain Falcon hits a jump and breaks the bomb off on a crane hook, heading for the F-Zero Grand Prix. When he gets there, we see a cutscene of the racers at the starting line, and it's time to go. The race begins, and oof, this track is real annoying. Tons of weird skinny track spots and places to fall off and die. In addition, Black Shadow and Blood Falcon are in the race, and they are not easy to beat. They're the only real challenge in the race, but they can get really far out in front of you. The track is super short, but this mission took me like 2 hours to beat. I can't count the number of times I just barely lost to Black Shadow or Blood Falcon due to them just having better boosters than you do. Captain Falcon finishes the race in first and claims the champion's belt. Meanwhile, the guy we saw at the beginning of the game shows up and tells Black Shadow he's failed for the last time, and pretty much just straight up vaporizes him. This is Deathborn, F-Zero champion of the Underworld, and he invites Captain Falcon to race him. Captain Falcon rolls up to the gate to the Underworld and Deathborn is there waiting for him. He reveals that the two champion belts from the Overworld and Underworld hold the powers of light and darkness, and when they fuse together, the person who controls them can pretty much control the universe, I guess. Yeah, that's a thing. But of course, they're gonna race for it. It's a simple 1v1 race against Deathborn, and strangely, I was able to beat it on my first try. I was very confused by that, considering it felt like the difficulty had been ramping up. It doesn't really feel like he put up a fight, and after I passed him, I pretty much had no trouble staying in front of him. The track you race on is pretty cool actually, though there's a bit much in terms of lava and mines trying to destroy your car. I kinda like this one. This is one of the few tracks from the mission mode that I wish you could race for real. Captain Falcon wins the race and gets the belt. He did it! Oh yeah, and Deathborn falls off the track and explodes. Back at his base, the champion's belt starts talking to him. And spirits come out of the belt? The creators? Apparently they created the world, and they set up everything? There's not forces of light and dark? He's the champion, so they're gonna take his soul? Yeah, I'm just confused as you. But we're gonna race, so whatever. This race is not hard, just annoying. Take a mildly fun track design and remove every wall keeping you from falling off, and this track is what you get. No barriers on the sides of any kind. You race against a ghost representing the three powers, I guess, and it's not a hard ghost to keep ahead of. I had way more trouble not falling off the course because of the lack of barriers. Captain Falcon wins and the creators disappear. Falcon takes off his helmet and leaves the base with some dramatic music playing and credits roll. What a silly mess. The overall gameplay of the story mode is wildly inconsistent but usually still fun, and the story is absolutely absurd and the cutscenes are silly. But I sort of like it in a way. It's cheesy and it does not take itself seriously at all. I think if they wanted to, they could have made a really fleshed out and long story / mission mode, but for what it is, it's not too bad, just a bit short. So that's F-Zero GX. After this, F-Zero had one more Japanese exclusive release in the form of F-Zero Climax on the Game Boy Advance in 2004. It was another 2D SNES-style F-Zero game that was claimed to be the most polished of the SNES style of F-Zero games, and it had a built-in track editor. But F-Zero GX would be the last fans would ever see of the 3D F-Zero games up until this point. 15 years and nothing. Personally, I can't help but feel like they left F-Zero when it was at its peak. I would absolutely love to see a modern F-Zero game with these kind of mechanics, but also have features like a built-in track editor. It has so much potential. Nowadays, fans are clamoring for a new release every Nintendo Direct, and while we've seen some new content in the form of cars and DLC tracks for Mario Kart 8, who knows if Captain Falcon will ever be in his own game again. But for now, F-Zero can take its place in the franchise graveyard. Thanks for watching, guys. This was a huge project, and I'm planning on making a few more of these. It's an interesting project for me personally, looking at franchises that haven't been around in 5 or more years. Something to note is that if I put a game in the franchise graveyard and it gets a new game or some sort of announcement, I will cover it. I think that's an appropriate kind of follow-up to do with a series like this. If you have a franchise that could be in the franchise graveyard, leave me a comment and let me know. I'm willing to look at it if it hasn't had an entry in 5 or more years and there is no indication or announcement of a new game coming out right now. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, click that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next time.